I feel that being able to drive just helped me fulfill my life and makes me feel better about myself.
Not everybody's going to be able to drive. There's a lot of heartbreak. That's part of life, and we want to make sure that our roads are safe.
Motoring 92 is brought to you by Quaker State. Quaker State, one tough motor oil.
Hello everybody and welcome to Motoring 92. You know, I suppose it's human nature to take things for granted. Good health, a job, family, and yes, even driving. But for the physically and mentally handicapped, the opportunity to drive offers them something else that we all tend to take for granted, and that's freedom. Well, we're in Vancouver, British Columbia this week to meet a man who was dedicated to helping the handicapped achieve that freedom.
For 20 years, Larry Bowen has worked with the disabled at Vancouver's G.F. Strong Rehabilitation Center. Beginning as a therapist, Larry Bowen is now the center's driver education instructor. He assesses about 300 physically and mentally disabled people each year.
I've always had a certain amount of patience. I can look at a person, sort of determine, you know, are they gathering the information, are they taking it in, and are they doing something with it? And it does require a lot of patience in a lot of cases, especially when you're looking at head injuries and people that have had strokes and are having problems speaking. You have to be just very patient, you know, listen to what they're saying, as well as hopefully getting across the information that you want to get across to them. Okay, what we have here now is what we call a computerized driver assessment module. As you can see, it looks like a simulator, but it's not. We call it an assessment module because it looks at the basics information that we need for driving. So what we're looking at is basic things like brake reaction time, ability to visually follow things around the person, their ability to read and follow instructions, the ability to manipulate the controls. And so we don't have scenery on the screen and sort of that extravagant type situation. We have very basic things. We have information that comes on the screen that gives you instructions on how to operate the machine. Okay, here we have the part of the assessment where we look at the controls, and it's telling me to put the left-hand turn signal on. When I do that, it goes on to the next instruction if I've done it right, which gives us some positive reinforcement as the person's manipulating the controls. Okay, we're going to put it into low gear, into reverse, into park. Okay, now seeing whether we're going to have strength to hold the brake down, pressing on the brake. Okay, now we're going to go into rear view mirror test, which looks at how the person can perceive through the mirror and determine if things are happening behind them. And I've indicated to the individual that they're going to be, if they see lights going to the left, they will turn their signal to the left, okay? And if the lights go to the right, they will turn their signals to the right-hand turn. Okay, start my car up. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Car's been started correctly, very good. Okay. In this part, we're going to be doing the braking test. We're going to be bringing our speed up to 50 after we put our car into drive. Release the emergency brake. Bringing our speed up to 50, and when we see a stop sign, we're going to be hitting the brakes. So we're going to be testing our brake reaction time. We're determining whether they can drive or not to give us basic information that the doctor can use. It's very objective and can say, yes, you've got the reaction time, you've got the ability to manipulate the controls, and visually you're capable of driving. And that information can be given to the doctor to make that determination.
I was kept on picking out cars I'd like to have, but actually in the back of my mind I realized I wouldn't be able to. I didn't think I'd be able to ever again.
The suspension is of the fully independent McPherson strut variety. It successfully damps out most road irregularities whilst managing to offer a competent feel.
Test Drive with Graham Fletcher.
This week on Test Drive, we look at the 1992 Toyota Camry, a car that has got some pretty big shoes to fill. The model this car replaces was recently recognized by the Canadian Automobile Association as being amongst the most trouble-free and durable on the market.
The 92 Camry is new from the ground up. The revised styling is contemporary and aerodynamic, but rather bland. It is, however, certainly more appealing than its rather angular predecessor. Inside, the usable space has been up by 15%, making the new car considerably roomier. In the rear there is ample head and leg room, as well as enough room to sit three abreast in reasonable comfort. The trunk is large and flat, offering a nice low liftover. Either or both halves of the split folding rear seat can be dropped down to accommodate longer items. For those needing yet more space, Toyota recently introduced a 5-door station wagon. The suspension is of the fully independent McPherson strut variety. It successfully damps out most road irregularities whilst managing to offer a competent feel. Ride comfort is what it should be, although I felt the car had a tendency to wallow a bit when on undulating pavement. The use of subframes front and rear really helps to reduce the amount of road noise transmitted to the passenger compartment. One of the highlights of the 92 Camry is the automatic transmission. It's dual mode and electronically controlled. In the power mode, it feels very crisp and very positive. If fuel economy is top of your list, then use the normal mode because it certainly improves overall mileage. The other thing I like is the lockout for the overdrive transmission. You can turn it off, which means in hilly terrain, you don't get that flip-flopping back and forth between third and overdrive. During the pylon test, the Camry displayed a fair amount of body roll between transitions as well as some understeer when pushed. Having said that, neither of these are any great concern because we are, after all, talking about a family sedan here. During the brake test, the Camry pulled up in a straight, precise line, requiring just 118 feet to stop from 80 kilometers an hour. The pedal feel was exceptionally good, allowing the driver to derive the best performance without fear of locking any of the wheels. Now there is an anti-lock option, one I suggest you invest in if you are considering purchasing the Camry. To ensure the appropriate motive power, Toyota have upped the size of the base 4-cylinder engine from 2 litres to 2.2 litres. The resulting improvement in performance is dramatic. The new engine features 16 valves, twin camshafts and electronic fuel injection. Power is rated at 130 horses and 145 pounds-feet of torque. On the skid pad, this translated to 0 to 100k times of just under 10 seconds. My pet peeve on the Camry is a minor one, but I found it very irritating. When you pull up to a stop sign in drive, you've got your foot on the brake, there is an annoying vibration comes up through the floor pan and through the steering wheel. Now, while this vibration won't annoy everybody, I found it extremely aggravating. And if I were buying the Camry, I would invest the extra money and go with the V6 engine. Anyway, now to the scoreboard for a rundown on the 1992 Toyota Camry. Given the Camry is aimed at the family market, the handling characteristics are actually quite good. Modest amounts of body roll and understeer are encountered only close to the limit, a long way from the usual driving conditions. The power steering, though, could do with a little less assist at speed. The new 2.2-litre engine offers ample power and loves to rev to the red line. This ensures prompt throttle response throughout the range. On the skid pad, we raced to the 100k mark in just under 10 seconds. The front disc rear drum brake system used on the Camry always yielded strong, sure stops, and the pedal is very easy to modulate. We required just 118 feet to stop from 80 kilometers an hour. The engine is quite quiet except under hard acceleration. Road noise is minimal and wind noise barely audible on the highway. Combine this with a compliant suspension and supportive seats and you have a very comfortable car. During a 1000k test, we averaged 10.5 litres per 100 kilometers or 27 miles per gallon. The high and low figures were 33 miles per gallon and 22 miles per gallon respectively. The newest Camry will continue Toyota's reputation for providing the consumer with durable, reliable products. This car offers Lexus-like quality, but I found the sum of the parts rather bland and nondescript from an aesthetic point of view.
Well, it's raining here in Vancouver, although the locals will tell you, hey, it's better than snow, and it's hard to argue with that. But if you want snow out here, it's only minutes away, and we'll show you how much snow later on in the program, so stick with us. But first, let's head to the dry garage and join Bill Gardner.
You remember those cars built in the 60s, 70s, and even as recently as the early 80s, where the body and chassis would just fall apart from rust and corrosion, and the powertrain would still be fine? Well, here's a perfect example. This old station wagon is just riddled with holes. The mirror will just come right off the door skin when you reach out to adjust it. But this thing's going to go to the auto wreckers with a pretty good running engine, in spite of the fact that the guy did very little maintenance to it. Well, today's cars have changed about 180 degrees from this baby. Now, today's cars have extensive corrosion protection built in right from the factory, but they also have much smaller displacement engines, and each year the engineers lean on these smaller engines just a little bit harder and squeeze more and more power to that reduced displacement. Now that means that an awful lot of components in these engines are very highly stressed nowadays, and one of the most stressed components in today's engines is the engine oil itself. And we want to have a look at a brand new lubricant from Quaker State. It's called SynQuest. It's a 100% synthetic lubricant. That means that all the molecules in this lubricant are man-made, and they're just inherently better right from the ground up. Now, this has an SAE rating of 5W50, and in every critical aspect that motor oils are rated in, this synthetic lubricant significantly outperforms the best conventional lubricant. It has a much lower pour point, so it's much more fluid at extremely low temperatures, and that, of course, is important in the Canadian climate. It has a higher flash point for high temperature operation, and it has a very low volatility, so the potential is there to greatly reduce oil consumption during hot weather, high speed type of driving in the summertime. Now, many other features to this motor oil make it a far superior lubricant for today's engines, and you're going to hear a lot more about it in the future. Now, there are other synthetic lubricants as well. We have a 100% synthetic chassis grease for lubricating the suspension and steering linkage of your car, and a 75W90 synthetic gear lubricant that would be used for lubricating differentials, rear axles, and some manual transmissions. Now, you're going to hear a lot more about these synthetic lubricants because the 92 Corvette comes from the factory with synthetic lubricants. And that's a car that with the same 350 cubic inch engine displacement has jumped from 250 horsepower in 91 to 300 horsepower in 92 in one fell swoop. So that gives you an idea of how hard they're leaning on these engines, producing more and more power. You're going to need better lubricants. And you might want to think about synthetics. They're a little bit more expensive, but if they keep you away from a major teardown like we've got here today, they're going to be worth every penny of it. Till next week, I'm Bill Gardner for Motoring 92.
The 1992 Nissan Maxima, the 92 Saturn, and the 92 Ford Explorer are three participants in Motoring 92's first long-term test. Over the next few months, these vehicles will be driven daily. They'll undergo routine maintenance programs. We'll report on the cost of maintenance, fuel mileage, and those aggravating pet peeves.
We chose the Saturn because of the North Americans. It's probably the single most talked about new model on the market today, and so it seemed appropriate to bring that into our long-term test fleet. The Maxima, I enjoyed road testing the Maxima so much the last time. It left such an indelible impression that I thought I'd bring it back as a representative of the family sedan category. We of course gave it the award at the year-end show. The third one is the Ford Explorer. Now, it's North America's top-selling sport utility vehicle, and the one that I personally use as a benchmark to judge all the others by. And there you have it. All very natural choices.
It feels like it was a big challenge for me ever to drive again. The doctors never thought I would be able to even sit here and speak with you like I am now. But to actually be able to speak is a big improvement, but being able to drive is such a big step that it gives me a lot more freedom, and I feel better about myself. And just overall, I can do many more things that just fulfills my life totally.
If you have any comments or stories you'd like to share with us, drop us a line at Motoring 92, Post Office Box 284, Station J, Toronto, Ontario, M4J 4Y1.
Earlier we met Larry Bowen, who has spent his life here in Vancouver helping the handicapped learn how to drive. Well, we're now going to meet one of his success stories.
Chris Nagy was in a coma for 5 months after his car was hit by a drunk, then rear-ended by a truck 10 years ago. He was 16.
Well, the main problem I have right now is balance. And with the blow I suffered to my head, it just put my equilibrium out completely. So I can stand no problem at all. Just when I move or take a step towards anything, I have to be holding on to something stationary to be able to regain my balance at the time.
Yeah, I think there was a number of times when we were out on the road and we felt, gee, I don't think this fella should be out here. And it took like one session, he'd be really not too bad. And the next session, I don't know, you know, and then the next session after that, he'd come right around again. And then he started getting a little more consistent. And when we started seeing that happening, then we knew that we were on the right road and we were on our way. But he did surprise us a number of times like that. And I think he surprised himself too when he, you know, but he was very determined. He wanted to drive.
Okay, I have a bracket mounted on the floor, and then a bar goes on both sides of the bar through the bracket. Makes left pedal on a pedal on the left side for the gas, goes through the bracket up to the existing gas pedal, lays on the gas pedal. So when I step on the left foot gas, it pushes down the right.
The left foot's your better foot.
Yes. The left foot has all the mobility. See, mainly I'm able to control the weight I put on the foot, so I'm able to drive. See, with the right foot, I'm not able to control the gas, so I just switch over and use the left for gas and brake.
In the fall of 1987, Chris put an ad in the local newspaper, the community paper, and requesting rides to the hockey games. He was a hockey fanatic and needed a ride because he didn't drive at the time. We started going to the hockey games, and a couple of years later we built a really good relationship and started living together. He's very determined. He, when many people told him he couldn't do things, he still strove to do them and tried his best, and most of the time he succeeds.
Mainly I had to relearn every single thing. I was only driving for less than a year before I had the accident. So mainly I had to drive. It was just a new experience all completely for me.
Did you take it for granted then, and how has that changed now as you drive?
Mainly I took everything for granted. I never realized how much more freedom you had when you could drive, and your lifestyle has changed completely and just allows you to do so much more. Yeah, I know I'm chasing them.
Your fellow motorists, tell me about the people on the road with you.
Some people aren't too patient, but they don't know that I'm a disabled driver. I plan on putting an extra placard on the back window, which will give me a little more freedom with certain things. People will take a little more time, be more courteous. But if I'm that much of a hazard, I shouldn't be driving. I think that I'm not that bad, just I've met up with a few really people that don't take too much time and don't realize what kind of things I have to deal with.
It just makes you feel good inside. And to see them with a big smile on their face, with holding their license and saying, I got it. And that's just a wonderful feeling for myself and them. And what's really neat is to see them, after they've been driving for a while, they'll come back and they'll visit us. And they'll say, you know, they'll thank us 100 times over again because we've given them that independence. And it's a great feeling.
Shopping for a good used car? The experts will tell you to look around. Discover who's had experiences, good and bad, with the vehicle. But this would mean talking to hundreds of people and visiting just as many used car lots. Highly improbable. Well, the Canadian Automobile Association asked more than 43,000 of its members about their favorite used car. The result? A top 10 list of good used car buys from the 1988 to 1990 model years. The Toyota Camry was the best used car and the car most people would buy again. Another Toyota, the Corolla, was a close second.
Why am I dressed like an insurance salesman? I'll tell you why when I come back in Kenzie's Corner in a moment.
Kenzie's Corner with Jim Kenzie.
Nice suit, eh? Well, don't worry. Just because I'm dressed like an insurance salesman doesn't mean I've gone over the wall. Actually, the insurance industry and I don't often agree on many things. But one thing we do agree on is graduated licensing. Now, graduated licensing is a program whereby new drivers, regardless of how old they are, face certain restrictions in their first couple of years behind the wheel. These restrictions might include no nighttime driving, no freeway driving, and zero tolerance for traffic tickets or drinking and driving. This program has proven very effective in reducing crashes in jurisdictions like Australia and New Zealand, where it's been in effect for several years. So why not Canada? After all, we've got a program that saves lives and saves money. Who could possibly be against it? Well, governments are always reluctant to change. And there would be some upfront administrative costs that would be difficult to sell in these recessionary times. And some inner-city parents feel their kids are safer driving cars than riding on public transit, even though the statistics show just the opposite. So that's why insurance guys, and those of us who dress like insurance guys, are behind graduated licensing 100%. What can you do to help? Well, do your kids a favor. Write to your member of provincial parliament or legislative assembly today and tell them you want graduated licensing where you live. I'm Jim Kenzie.
Well, we've all heard about the greenhouse effect that is supposedly warming up this planet, and as a result, many areas don't have as much snow as they used to. Well, up here on Mount Washington in Vancouver Island, you can see it is snowing. How much snow do they have? Well, would you believe I'm sitting on somebody's shoulders? Would I kid you? Of course not. Anyway, that's it for now. We'll see you next week for more stories about cars and the people who drive them. How you doing down there?
Motoring 92 has been brought to you by Quaker State. Quaker State, one tough motor oil.